Hello and welcome back. This week I took delivery of the Endless Processor from Blukač Instruments in Ukraine. It's their first module and it's a kind of infinite sustain machine for Eurorack. You can basically take any audio input and it will resynthesize the spectrum of that sound that's coming in and produce a kind of infinitely looping version of it. There are 5 layers which you can build up, and there are 2 channels, each of which has 5 layers, so it's a kind of 2-channel device. And yeah, I've had it a couple of days, only really started to scratch the surface of it, but it's already doing stuff that I can't really do any other way. Allows you to build up these really big complex walls of sound which you can then sculpt in other unusual ways. So for this video I thought I'd build up a chord by layering 5 different pitches on one another on the first channel, and I'll build up another chord on the second channel at a slightly lower pitch, and I'll use them as the kind of raw material for a kind of dubby techno kind of groove by sculpting those sounds and using a couple of different devices to kind of give them a bit of rhythmic focus rather than just being a static drone. So the way I'm going to do that, I've got the Harmonic shift oscillator from New Systems Instruments up here, which is going to be my only sound source for the kind of synth part. So that's just a mono simple VCO, which produces nice rich harmonic outputs. I'm just going to take that through the Expert Sleeper's Persephone VCA and control that with an envelope from Inertia from New Systems. And I'm just going to control that via the first sequencer channel on the Beatstep Pro. I've just got the CV and gate going into the Volt Pro Octave and the Inertia there, which means I can just play very simple monophonic notes there. That is running into the first channel of Endless Processor, and what I will do is I will kind of capture a few different notes in the 5 layers to build up a chord. That first channel output is then running through the Serge Resonant Equalizer, which will give me a fair bit of kind of sound sculpting control there in the frequency domain using these multiple EQ bands with a bit of feedback as well. That's then running through the Optomix LPG, and I'll be using some kind of rhythmic triggers from the drum channel of the Beatstep Pro to hit the strike input on the Optomix, which will then give us some kind of rhythmic movement in those chords. The second channel of Endless Processor is going to take the same input to allow me to build up a different chord. That output instead is going to run through the Serge Variable QVCF, the filter, and again into the other channel of Optomix, and I'll be using an envelope from Contour 1 to control that rather than striking it. Both those outputs from the Optomix are going to go into this matrix mixer, which will give me a kind of dry mix and also effectively an effects send, which will go to the echo, tape echo effect that I'm going to use on this Zoom pedal. And apart from that, I've got some other drum sounds controlled by the Beatstep Pro in my other rack off screen, just some 808 drum sounds, and I've got a sub-bass kind of part on sequencer 2, which will be pretty much inaudible unless you're using headphones probably, but it's a kind of vital part of this groove that I'm going to build up. So let's get started by building up the chord kind of tone that we're going to have in the first channel of Endless Processor, which will be the kind of raw sonic building block for the first chord part. So the way it works on the Endless Processor, you have this little pot controls your kind of input monitoring, and then the volume 1 pot there is the output level. So I've got that maxed, I've got the input monitor up so I can hear it. The fade in and fade out pots at the top control how quickly the layers fade in and out when you capture or clear them from the layer. And the memory control in the middle here controls how much of the buffer is used to kind of resynthesize the sound from a few milliseconds to about 3 seconds, I think it is. And then this control bottom right lets you control the layer from 1 to 5, selects the active layer basically, and this switches between channel 1 and 2. So I'm in channel 1, layer 1. So before I start capturing anything, I should just say the sound I've kind of dialed in on Harmonic shift oscillator is quite a simple, pure sort of tone. There's not really much other dynamic timbral changes going on, but you'll hear if I adjust this harmonic stride control, I want there to be a bit of movement in it as I kind of approach this spectrum that I like. It's kind of a slightly square wavy sort of sound. I want there to be a bit of movement because that gives the Endless Processor something to kind of chew on when it's building its spectrum, gives it a little bit of extra movement rather than being too static. So let's get started. Let's hit this E, which will be the root note of my triad, and I'll just hit the infinity button there to grab that into the first layer. And you can hear that's now cycling indefinitely. Let's switch to layer 2. And let's hit the next note up in the minor chord. Let's grab that. And up to layer 3. And let's just go up to the minor 7th and 9th as well. So there we've got this full chord with a nice bit of movement going on, but it's sustaining indefinitely. And because it's running through the resonant EQ, a little bit of feedback, let me just dial that back a bit. We can kind of sculpt this sound quite a bit through here. This is quite a nice companion, I find. Let's just keep it flat for the moment, or flattish. And let's just start some rhythmic triggers going into Optomix, and I'll gradually bring down the level here, and those triggers will start to have an effect. And what's quite nice about hitting the strike input but keeping this level control is that I can keep some of that full chord just hovering away in the background like that. So that's going into the matrix mixer, and if I use this second pot as an effects send, there's a bit of echo. And now I can play around with the EQ again. That's the kick drum. And I'll just bring in that sub bass part as well. So there, with this resonant EQ and the Optomix, we get this really nice kind of dubby chord texture. And as I bring this up, we can add a bit of kind of tension and release with this. A few more drums. So let's build up the second channel on Endless Processor now as well. And for that, I'm going to use the same input, Oscillator, but I'm going to take it down a notch. Let's just bring up the second channel, and let's just switch to channel 2 and layer 1 and grab that. Switch to layer 2. Grab that. And that's running through the variable Q filter from Serge. And I've got another envelope from Contour 1, I've got another trigger pattern from the Beatstep. And let's give that a load of reverb, load of delay rather. Just got one little note at the end of the 4-bar phrase like that. Let's give it a bit of resonance. there you go, just a quick jam, as you can hear, using that kind of raw material from a single oscillator to build up these two chords, which you can then use as the kind of sonic material for a track like this. Lots of fun. Looking forward to trying some other kind of sounds and seeing what else can come out of it. If you've enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.